Good morning and welcome back to the KBA's Virtual Colloquium 2020 organized by the Department of Planning, Innovation and Research. I am Enalisa Zaman from the Institute of Teacher Education, International Languages Campus, Malaysia, and I am the moderator for today's presentation. Before we proceed with today's presentation, I will briefly present to you the format. The speaker will present her talk for about 40 minutes. This will be followed by a Q&A session from the audience. If you have a question for our speaker, please feel free to post it in the chat box. The speaker will be answering questions at the end of the session. If we don't get to your question during today's webinar, we will follow up afterwards. Now, allow me to introduce you to our presenter for today, Dr. Azlina binti Mohamad. Her presentation is entitled Leadership Assessment, Great Leaders in the Making. Dr. Azlina has more than 20 years of experience in the field of secondary school education and teacher training institution. She is currently attached to the English Language Teaching Center, or ELTC, as a trainer, and her role involves coaching teachers in both proficiency and pedagogical aspects. Her professional journey includes active involvement in curriculum revision, material selection and adaptation, module writing, and research. Without further ado, please welcome Dr. Azlina.
Thank you, Dr. Tengku and Aliza, for the warm welcome and brief introduction for myself. A very good day and welcome to all who have tuned in to this session. First and foremost, I would like to take this opportunity to express my gratitude to the host of this conference for giving me the space to share my perspective on the theme capacity building, educational leadership and management. You see, the previous webinar series that has taken place, and today is the 15th series, have touched on various aspects of leadership. They've looked into the qualities, the traits of a leader, which include emotional intelligence. Also looks at the global and local trends and initiatives relating to leadership. For today's session, my sharing will actually focus on leadership assessment, great leaders in the making. The flow of my presentation is as follows. The session will begin by defining who are actually leaders. We need to understand that and later relates it to teacher leaders, which I feel apt to the context in which we are in at the moment and what leadership is all about. Moving on, I will then look into what leadership assessment is all about. The next focus will then be looking at why leadership assessment is important and how we can actually use this in helping us to become great leaders. So moving to my next slide. Leaders. Who are leaders? We normally associate leaders with those who lead a particular organization, institution, a department, or probably in our context, a school. The performance, success, and longevity of any organization depends highly on its leaders. So leaders at different capacities are actually responsible for the running of the organization, as well as key decision makings that either make the organization or break the organization. So if we look at this slide, leaders are actually defined differently by many. But what they have in common is how they impact on those they lead. In one of these definitions, we can see that one is a leader when you are able to bring out the best of others and provide opportunities for growth. We see leaders as those who are willing to sacrifice for his or her team members. Leaders are also those who are able to influence others. And I see that a lot in many organizations. But then to empower them is another skill, to be responsible for the organization's goals. The responsibility of achieving an organization's goal are actually shouldered together. As you can see in this picture, a leader is one who goes down to the ground to work towards the goal and not someone who just tells you how to go about it. Yes, it's very true that leaders have followers, but you see, leaders have followers not because of their position. It should not be the way. It should be basically due to the trust that they have in you as a leader. And therefore, those followers will be with you through thick and thin. I would personally say that every one of us is a leader some way or another. One can be a leader of an organization, a leader of a team, or even in our context, in the education context, a leader in a classroom. What differs between these roles is just the titles that goes with it. You can either be addressed as the CEO, you can also be addressed as a principal, or even the head of a department, a coordinator, and head of a panel. Whenever you take lead amongst a group of people towards a shared goal, you are a leader. There is an outcome at the end that you want to attain in that journey. Thomas Carlyle believes that some leaders are born and they're not made. He said that it's either you have it or you don't. However, I many have contest on that idea, and leadership or leaders are able to learn. You can actually learn how to become a leader and an effective one. Either way, both require work. See, great leaders tend to motivate and inspire. They encourage those they lead to better themselves and the people around them. They are often defined, great leaders, I would say, are often defined by the organization or institution they belong to, or even the positions that they need to fill. So now that we are clear what leaders or who leaders are, what about leadership? What is leadership? Sorry. Leadership is, according to Hughes in 2019, leadership might be hard to define, and many people have defined it differently, but it's actually easy to recognize. It is often recognized by the behaviors employed by the leader in managing the team. Conger in 1992 indicated that leadership is largely an intuitive concept for which there can be never be a single definition, a single agreed upon definition. However, central to the various definitions in the recurring theme of leadership is that the use of non-cohesive influences to coordinate the activities of group members towards the accomplishment of a group's desired goals. Most great leaders have a style that is unique to them and includes traits developed over time through a variety of leadership experiences. Whatever leadership style you practiced 5 years ago may not be the same that you practice now. Even the trends in leadership change. What more leadership styles? A close example that I can share would be when I was myself first appointed as a head of panel of an English language panel in school. I would consider myself novice in leadership. But over time, I learned through experience, through sharing sessions, and also networking on how to become a better leader for my team. What I practiced when I first started, and in the 8th year of leading the same panel or the panel, I find myself tremendously evolved and gradually realized that I have become a better person and hopefully to my team members, a better leader. Leadership is not actually about the position you hold in total, but it's more about who you are. The position entails a list of jobs. That's very true. The specifications that you need to fill when you hold a particular post. But how you ensure these aspects or these specifications are fulfilled, it's actually on you. There's no manuals provided to give you a step-by-step guide in fulfilling the required specifications. Leadership attributes are specific actions a leader may take in ensuring that the shared goals are achieved. You see, the leadership styles are the broader concepts that define a leader's overall approach. Therefore, understanding both behaviors and styles of leadership, you can actually identify techniques that will help you to succeed in whatever environment you're in. You see, thousands of leadership models and concepts have all come together to form this complex tapestry like a remarkable chemical formula that we assume everybody or any academician can understand. But there is a need to realize that people have been practicing leadership for a very long time. In fact, for millenniums. So, how people view leadership may vary according to time and also according to perspective and the environment or surrounding. Understanding your personal strength and preferences can help you adjust your leadership style to be effective in varied environments with different individuals and teams. You need to realize that the teams that you have may not be the same. People come and go, even in an organization. People don't stay put for a very long time. So the members of that team may be different people over, for example, a period of months or even years. So when you're able to understand your personal strength, you'll be able to lead others, no matter what the desired goals are, and regardless of the situation. Now let's move on to a more familiar context when we talk about leaders and leadership, which comes to my next slide. Teacher leadership. I would like to draw your attention to teacher leadership. Now, it's not, I believe now, the notion of teacher leadership is not new. Studies have documented how effective school leadership has an influence on both achievement of the students and also the effectiveness of the school itself. School leaders are no longer confined to just the school principals or school heads specifically, as the notion of school leaders has now expanded to include teachers. Research has also expanded onto an examination on how the influence of teacher leadership on school improvement. You see, teacher leaders, according to Kazemayer and Moller in 2001, they lead within and beyond the classroom, influence others towards an improved educational practice, and identify with and contribute to a community of teacher leaders. Teacher leadership is actually a set of skills demonstrated by teachers who are able to influence students, not just in the classroom, but outside the classroom and beyond. This is what Danielson has to say in 2006. And current research indicates that teacher leadership has a direct positive effect on school improvement, school effectiveness, and also the teacher morale. So, in the 21st century and beyond now, teachers no longer hold the role of just as a classroom instructor. They are now expected to perform a wider range of leadership roles to cater for not just the students' needs, but also teachers, which are their peers, and also the teaching profession itself. If we were to go back to the Malaysian Education Blueprint, one of the initiative is to actually uphold the role of teacher profession. So teacher leadership, I would see, would be one of the roles in fulfilling that, one of the ways and efforts to fulfill that. Harrison and Killian in 2007 identifies these roles as a resource provider, instructional specialists, curriculum specialists, classroom supporters, mentors, school team leaders, and also data coaches. Owing to these different roles, teachers in schools are called teacher leaders, and the execution of their leadership roles is perceived as teacher leadership. According to Frost in 2010, teacher leadership refers to taking the initiative to improve practice, acting strategically with colleagues to embed change, gathering and using evidence in collaborative processes, contributing to the creation and dissemination of professional knowledge. If you were to look at that definition, what I can say is that is what teachers do practically on a daily basis. To improve practice and transform teaching and learning, teacher leaders often need to possess expertise in specific areas, for example, in the curriculum, professional development, and even assessment. Although the roles vary in nature and functions, the key aims of teacher leadership remains the same, and that they are to model effective practices, exercise influence in formal and both formal and informal setting, and promote collaborative team structure within their school towards achieving a shared goal. York Barr and Duke in 2004 have highlighted some potential benefits of teacher leadership. First is engagement, commitment, and engagement. Teacher leaders inform management and engage in decision making, and participating at this level can increase teachers' ownership and commitment to the profession and the school goals. That is why we need to empower teachers to take that role, and therefore they too will gear towards achieving the same goal as how it's been stipulated by the national philosophy, for example. It encourages teachers to be actively engaged, contribute, and take responsibility for and become accountable of what is happening in their school. Second benefit will be the knowledge, skills, and learning transfer and growth. You see, teacher leaders advance teaching and learning by modeling effective practice to other teachers and sharing their knowledge and skills with others in the field. So teacher leaders themselves continue to learn and grow as they lead and work with others. And I find that that is what the current situation is all about. We see now new posts are being created. For example, we have the SIC Plus, who plays the role as a coach to help teachers to be pedagogically in tune with their teaching, aware of whether they have practice and they are actually using the best practices in their teaching. Okay. Teachers will then serve as a role model and mentors to other teachers. It doesn't have to be a separate role outside the school. It can also be roles that within the school compound or within the school environment itself. And in the process, they continue to learn themselves. It's a two-way communication. Apart from that benefit, recognition and reward will actually lead to retention and advancements. Recognition and rewards and opportunities that accompany the title of teacher leaders are thought to retain and motivate and recruit teachers. This is very in line with our effort to uphold the teaching profession. Thus, teacher leadership acknowledges and rewards teachers expertise and dedication, increasing teacher retention and opportunities for advancement. The important contributions that teachers make are more prominent and easily recognized by administrators and their peers when they take on teacher leadership roles. And last but not least, of course, when teachers takes role of a leader, students benefit from this. Teacher leaders will provide students with a positive example of leadership by, for example, modeling democratic leadership and collective responsibility in a community environment. So, in whatever context you belong to, the definition of leaders and leaderships, as shared in the previous slides, applies. Teacher leaders, too, need to have an impact on those who they lead. And this group of people they lead, not necessarily just be students, but it can also be teachers themselves within the school community. So how do we ensure that teacher leaders are able to deliver the above? Thus, I find that there is a crucial need for us to first look at ourselves. Among the questions that we need to ask ourselves is probably, do we have what it takes to be a leader? Are we able to have an influence on others? Do we possess the traits, what people call as great leaders? Therefore, I see the need for leadership assessment. But before I relate leadership assessment to teacher leadership, I would like to share the understanding of leadership assessment in general. It is a process for identifying and describing an individual's unique characteristics as they pertain to either leading, managing, or directing others, and how such characteristics fit into a given position or a requirement, a position's requirement. For example, before appointing a head of department post, appointing an individual for a head department post, the organization would want to assess if the candidate possesses the traits required for the post. So a possible leadership tool might be applied in order to determine whether the candidate fits nicely into the post that they have available. Leadership assessment also describes a person's way of leading others with reference to a specific position, present or future. This information is often used in selection, placement, or even development decisions. However, the objective is to help organizations to maximize their leadership, finding the right leaders and placing them in positions where they'll succeed and drive productivity. So we do actually have not just one leader, but we might have other leaders of different skills within an organization. Leadership assessment also evaluates how you lead and provides an accurate evaluation of your competence and your potential, thus providing room for learning, growth, and improvement. You see, it gives you a general idea of your ability as a leader in any capacity and allows you or the organization to know the kind of leadership skills you have in the most constructive way. In other words, leadership assessment actually helps you to capitalize your leadership strength and assists you in improving your leadership weaknesses. In the context of teacher leaders, the assessment is the process in which teachers, whether individually or collectively, influence their colleagues, principals, or other members of the school community to improve teaching and learning practices with the aim of increased student learning and achievement. So, in a way, leadership assessment is very close to our role as teacher leaders. So, why is there a need to assess? Knowing what leadership assessment is not enough, but we need to also know why. You see, we drives or leaders, for example, drives organizations. Their role involves developing mission, creating and implementing strategy, pushing the limits of innovation, and motivate their subordinates to perform better. Unfortunately, many organizations are unsure of how their best leaders are and why their next leader or where their next leaders are coming from, either internally or externally. In our education context, that's normally what happens when there is a vacancy in a particular post. Normally, we do not know whether the leaders or those who are supposed to be replacing the post will come from internal or those outside the organization. So when we talk about leadership, we look not just at the way they practice the leadership style, but also their personality types. And there's no one size fits all to make it work in any kind of organization or team or institution. See, you see, people tend to be complacent where they are and tend to take things for granted. And complacency is actually poisoned. So, the fuel for leadership is actually constant curiosity and regular assessment. By doing so, you will continuously seek for opportunities to improve yourself as a leader. Leaders know that to keep up with their leadership skills, they need to do something, they need to assess themselves. So I see the importance of knowing oneself when it comes to leadership. A quotation from Lars Sutherland, who is an advisor and an executive trainer on leadership change, strategy change, and communication for global corporation and their leaders, once said, "Great leadership starts with self-leadership." And self-leadership is actually the practice of intentionally influencing your thinking, your feelings and actions towards your objectives. This is what Bryant and Kazan has to say in 2012. So to reach optimal performance, emerging leaders must understand themselves and why they have the tendency to behave and think certain ways. So leadership assessment tools provide that practical steps that you can actually apply to measure your leadership and work towards boosting those relevant skills. And it is important to test your leadership skills against a baseline and see where you stand and how you can reach higher. This baseline is actually a set of criteria you have prescribed as the qualities of a great leader. It will become your benchmark, and thus you assess yourself in view of that prescribed criteria. You see, there's no perfect leaders. Everyone has leadership traits that are their strengths and deficits that expose their weaknesses. But not everyone is aware of these pluses and minuses in their leadership makeup. That's why a periodic test of leadership skills is like checking the oil of your leadership and seeing if you need another quart and where. There are many types of leadership tools available. Among some that I can actually share with you would be a predictive index test, which allows organizations to evaluate the cognitive abilities and personality traits of a potential employee. There are two types of predictive index tests used to screen potential candidates. One is the predictive index cognitive assessment, and the other is also known as PICA, and the other is the predictive index behavioral assessment, known as PIBA, PIBA. Now, these tests measure your abstract intelligence and all personality characteristics, such as dominance, extraversion, uh, patience, and formality. PICA, for instance, objectively tests a candidate's cognitive ability and abstract intelligence. Because your cognitive ability is indicative of your future performance as an employee, taking this assessment helps you and your potential employer understand if you'll be a good fit for the role. PICA also aims to eliminate unconscious bias in hiring process by gauging your ability to learn new skills and how quickly you can adapt to changing conditions in the workplace. It tests the verbal and numerical and abstract reasoning. On the other hand, PIBA, PIBA, Predictive Index Behavioral Assessment, tests your cultural fit in the workplace by discovering your personal motivations and needs. It helps employers to select employees with the personality traits that will help them succeed in the position and the work environment. Probably this is something we need in our system to ensure that people are placed in specific roles or in the right roles to be able to deliver what is required. Another tool that can be used would be the leadership style inventory (LSI) test. It focuses on how leaders are acting, thinking, and feeling in the context of their position. It can also be used for potential candidates advancing to a higher leadership position. And the results of this test map relevant leadership styles. It bridges the gap between traditional personality traits and leadership styles. Okay. So, based on what is shared about leadership assessments and its importance, I believe this assessment has a significant role to play in improving the roles of teacher leaders. So that comes to my next slide. You see, just as scholars have defined leadership in different ways, they equally vary in their perception on what constitutes great leadership. You see, many researchers and leadership experts have outlined the traits of great leaders. And I believe whoever holds the role of a leader would want to fulfill these requirements or these traits or wish to have these traits. There's no one set that overtakes the other. They are all equally important, and to me, they are all equally valid. They all portray what a leader should have and how they should be reflected. Thus, when you undertaking a leadership assessment, one needs to keep in mind that whatever criteria used in a particular tool or battery, focus is actually on identifying one's the characteristics that they possess and how they would benefit the position he or she holds or going to hold. And often, measuring leadership effectiveness in meaningful and useful way is a very difficult exercise. One of the reasons is because the individual definition or theory that is used in the assessment only highlights the characteristics, the certain behaviors, and not all. When one defines leadership in terms of a certain behavior, only those behaviors are assessed, while other behaviors of the leaders are typically not assessed. Thus, what makes a great leader will depend on one's definition of leadership. and the set of criteria that governs it. That brings me to the quotation by D. Hock. I'm attracted to this quotation. He's actually the founder of Visa. And he claims that if you want to lead, invest at least 40% of your time in leading yourself. I find this quotation interesting as it draws in on the importance of knowing oneself before taking the role of leading others. This is then supported by Lars, as I mentioned earlier, who claims that people want to lead others, but why not start by leading yourself? Although this quotation relates closely to those in the managerial or corporate line, there's room for these to be applied in our context as teacher leaders. So that comes to what I find as very important in the making of a great leader. You see, leadership is action. And the most effective way to measure how effective leaders are in inspiring others is to come together and achieve the goals, is to assess the individual leader behavior. Remember what Frost said? That teacher leadership refers to taking the initiative to improve practice, acting strategically with colleagues to embed change, gathering and use evidence in collaborative processes in order to create and to contribute to the creation and dissemination of professional knowledge. In order to achieve that, you must first self-develop yourself. And all leadership development is first and foremost self-development. Before you're able to influence others, you need to influence yourself first. Discovering and reflecting on one's own leadership behavior is an essential step in the process. Despite the different tools and battery available to assess one's leadership, I would like to put forth 3 strategies to leadership assessment in which every leader can practice, either on a daily basis or periodically. These strategies to leadership assessment was actually highlighted by Lars Sutman in one of his talks. They are, as you can see on the screen, self-awareness, self-reflection, and self-regulation. Although these are strategies from the corporate world, I personally find them relevant to our roles as teacher leaders. As teacher leaders, we need to constantly practice the strategies to improve ourselves, and indirectly then it will bring impact to the betterment of the team that we lead. First is to actually practice self-awareness. Now, self-awareness is critical in developing the capacity to lead. A leader needs to be self-aware of his or her own behaviors. By becoming self-aware and subsequently recognizing their strengths, weaknesses, and hidden biases, leaders gain the trust of their team members and increase their own credibility. So again, when you come to the context, for example, you're coaching another peer or another teacher, you must first identify what is your strength in you that makes this teacher have trust that you can actually get them to reach where you want them to be. In addition to helping leaders develop professionally, self-awareness also help them to have a positive impact on the organization. And self-awareness is actually an effort. According to Caldwell 2010, it is a conscious effort to invest in understanding who we are, who others are, our universal rule that we apply in life, and our commitment to the future. For leaders struggling to develop self-awareness, Carl advises them that it takes work and willingness to recognize that reality is truth. The ability to be perceptively in tune with yourself and your emotion, as well as having sound situational awareness, can be a very powerful tool for leading a team. So not only does self-awareness work to make leaders more cognizant of their actions, emotions, and biases, it helps them to develop greater emotional intelligence in the process. Developing self awareness as a leader will strengthen not only individual performance, but organizational performance as well. Ultimately, the immense amount of understanding, trustworthiness, and wisdom that self aware leaders possess equips them with critical skills for success. Thus, it is vital to do a character check and assess yourself if you possess the traits needed to be a great leader. The next one is to practice self reflection. Self reflection in leadership means carving out time to review yourself as a leader and is critical for your leadership development. It involves examining your current level of skills, your strengths, weaknesses, behavioral patterns, and how you seek to influence others. You see, leaders who don't take time to reflect regularly on themselves and where they are actually heading tend to bump into failure time and time again. So, self reflection entails giving serious thought to your character, your actions, your behavior, and even your beliefs. It also involves asking yourself thought provoking questions so that you can develop a deeper understanding about yourself. Self reflection is nothing new in the profession, in the teaching profession, because we do self reflection every day. We do self reflection in our teaching, our lessons. So move it a step further by asking ourselves, how about us as a leader? According to Beth Miller, when you don't take time for your own self-reflection, you are essentially saying that you are perfect as a leader and you no longer need to develop and grow. A great leader is one who looks for opportunity to grow. Great leaders practice self reflection on a regular basis. They ask themselves questions regarding both positive and negative situations too. Although it's a very humble process, yet it is a very powerful technique that help leaders and anyone else for that matter to improve their performance. But it's a tough process. It takes you, it requires you to become very honest at looking at yourself and being open to learn and overcome your weaknesses. It is often uncomfortable, yes, but just like exercising, it's tough at first, but when it is on a daily basis, it becomes easier and enjoyable. Take a couple of minutes of the day to think of the challenges you have achieved and those you might encounter in the day. For example, a teacher who have just entered the class. What were the difficult situations you encounter in class? What was it? Why was it a failure when you're not able to manage it? Studies have shown that taking the 1 or 2 minutes of reflection can actually help raise your compassion level and performance. In order to be effective, you need to be brutally honest when you self reflect. You can't and you cannot hide the uncomfortable truth. Instead, you face up to any shortcomings and make a commitment to yourself to resolve them. Okay. The last one is self regulation. Self regulation. To practice self regulation is actually a tool for reframing. Leaders who exhibit good self regulation or who practice self regulation are able to control their emotions and responses to situation and other people. You see, a great leader is one who's able to react accordingly and appropriately to unexpected situations. They don't have angry outbursts or make snap judgments unnecessarily. And they now often lead by example. Daniel Goleman, the 21st century guru of emotional intelligence, says that self regulation is a core leadership skill. When you encounter people who have yet to complete the task given before you, trash your anger what I mean is, before you trash your anger on someone who fails to complete a task that you have given them, take a few minutes or a few seconds. We don't have minutes actually. You only have seconds, and scale it between 1 to 10 and see how important is that issue now. Is it worth the while for you to actually trash your anger on something that is of that particular moment not very important? Reframe and address the issue accordingly. If something goes wrong, it is easy to blame somebody else. It's very easy. When you point someone saying that you are wrong, one finger is pointing to the other, whereas the other three points back at you. So it's actually coming back to you as a leader. However, great leaders not often put this aside and instead shift their focus onto solving. You see, when such difficult situations occur, great leaders would put their emotions aside and focus on solving the problem at hand. This is what it means by leading yourself. So, and it's not easy to practice self-regulation. All right. I've encountered four self-regulation tactics. One of them is becoming more aware of your emotions and how you react to them. So according to Goleman's emotional intelligence leadership competencies, being self-aware allows you to make better decisions. Aware of your emotions will help you say, okay, my focus today is on this, therefore I should not let others influence me. Apart from that, you can also take the 24-hour rule. Rather than sending difficult emails or speaking to the person when you're upset, take a step back and try to absorb everything first. Venting your anger sometimes, or most of the time, will not make you feel better. It will actually prolong and amplify your anger. So by taking time to think about the situation, you'll see things a little bit more clearly and feel better about how to communicate your feelings. Always remember to also breathe in and breathe out. I know being a leader, sometimes you will encounter a situation in which it just push you up to the ceiling. But again, excuse yourself from that kind of situation and start to think and be focused. Alleviate the stress. Slow down your heart rate and focus on what is more important. And last but not least, the last tactic that I found was to take time to think about different situations and emotions. Think of ways you can react differently by altering your behavior and emotions. You'll be surprised by how planting in your brain effective ways to handle potential difficult situation can actually trigger your emotion to act more positively and a more self-regulated way. So I see that when you invest some time to do the above, self-aware, self-reflect, and self-regulate, I believe that you are on the path of becoming a great leader. With that, I shall pass the floor back to the moderator. Thank you.
Insightful presentation. Um, Definitely, your presentation today is an eye opener for many. a challenging task, no doubt, but not impossible to do. All right, we have about two questions here.
Yeah.
The first one, um, do you think that teacher leaders are able to improve their leadership skills through these strategies? Would you like to answer? Would you like me
Okay.
to tell
All right.
both,
Now,
or both questions, or one question at a time?
yeah, I'll just address it one at a time.
Okay, sure, no
Okay.
problem.
All right. Whether this strategy works on an individual, it depends on how the individual leaders or individual themselves practice it. You see, one of the things that I've highlighted actually on self-reflection is being brutally honest about yourself. And if you merely just practice it and for the mere seeking reason of practice but not applying it, therefore it would not have an impact on you as a leader. You self-reflect on something that you feel worth reflecting and gives positive vibes to you, but you tend to put aside those negative ones and you feel that no, I'm not going to go into that area because it's going to harm me or it will make me feel bad. But those are the areas in which you have to look into, because for all you know, that is the weakness that you need to improve. So again, when you come when you um, to decide whether these strategies works on an individual or a leader will be how the leader, the person itself practice it. So you have to be honest, you have to be open, you have to be transparent to actually know your own strength and weaknesses. And I think for teacher leaders, we need to have that. Yeah,
Okay.
basically that's it.
Okay. All right. So, which brings us to the next question. Actually, how frequent would you suggest a teacher leader practice those strategies that you have suggested?
Yeah, I did mention in my slide, in my session, that you can either do it on a daily basis
Mhm.
or periodically. Depends on the needs itself. Um, as teachers that ourselves, even we do reflect, as I mentioned earlier, we do reflect on a daily basis, but the area of reflection may not be the same. So it depends on the individual, I would say. Uh, I would look at it on a daily basis, but not in depth, meaning that I will always, on a daily basis, self-aware, do the practice of to be self-aware and to self-reflect and to self-regulate when the needs requires you to do so. These are the things that you might need to practice so that you can become a better person. And when you are a better person, you will then influence the others around you. And that I feel is a very important role a leader must play, because in order to achieve any goal that you have for your team, for your organization, it has to be from you. It has to start from you. So if
Yeah.
you don't work towards it, you can't expect others to do the same.
Sure. Okay. Right. Thank you very much, Dr. Azina. Let me try to summarize what you have actually presented. You've talked about leadership and what it entails and the impact of leadership, which brings to your main point of your presentation is leadership assessment is essential in ensuring a check and balance culture within an organization, and that also to ensure the success of organizations, especially in choosing the right leaders for that fits their bill or their criteria. Okay, and you've also mentioned that, which I found very strong words, very strong words actually. You were saying that leaders should lead themselves before leading others, and with
Correct.
that, you've also talked about how leaders should have self-awareness, self-reflection, and self-regulation. Meaning, you, as a leader, or if you want to become a leader, you would have to continuously reflect upon yourself. And basically, in my opinion, I feel that you're saying the point is you're taking charge of yourself your emotions, your perspectives of matters or challenges. Am I right in that?
Yeah,
Summarizing what?
you're right. Yes. Because I feel that, you see, you can't lead others when you don't know how to lead yourself.
Mhm,
So before you are able to get others to be on board with you need to be certain of where you're heading and
mhm,
whatever goals you have actually outlined for your team and organization. So when that is very clear within yourself, and therefore you are able to disseminate that or share that with your team members.
mhm. Yeah, definitely. I agree with you. It all comes down, boils down to yourself,
Yes,
and making the changes. Okay. Um, we've come to the end of our session. Thank you once again, Dr. Azlina, for enlightening
you're
us with
most
the topic
welcome. Thank you.
on leadership assessment, great leaders in the making. We hope that all of you out there have gained some insights on the matter and enjoyed the presentation by Dr. Azlina. With that, this brings us to the end of our session for today. Our next session will be tomorrow on the 21st of October 2020 at the same time, that is 11 a.m. Do join us for this session. Thank you for being with us today.